Welcome back to the big issue on City 973 and also on City TV. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. As always, you can join us via WhatsApp line 0549 986 996 and 0550585832. 0549 986 996 and 0550585832. You can also join us via our Facebook pages, City TV GH and City 973 on Facebook as well. You can leave your comments there. I have a couple that I will run through discussing the economy, currency, budget issues, fuel, all aspects of it, all the issues that have come up this week, because that is what Ghanaians are talking about this week a lot, the economy and how it's impacting them. So I'm doing this with Dr. Thea Champong. He's an economist and political risk analyst, and Samuel Bequin, economist and extractive governance expert. And just to take a couple more of your messages before I continue the conversation. This one says, Anyagri Gideon from Garu says the government started on a good note, but things have changed. They have completely failed. Prices of commodities keep on increasing. Security is poorer. Salaries remain constant. And this is a killer government, he says. I totally disagree with the president as regards the payment of e-levy. He should crack the whip by cutting down on salaries of Article 71 office holders by 50%. This will save the economy of the country. This is coming from Wilson. Aria from the mountains says, Dr. Baumia, please take the key from the old IGP and hand it over to the new one. Our businesses are suffering. Alan in Chantai says, well, he wants to know how we got to say the cedi is the worst performing currency. Well, Alan, all you have to do is just check on Bloomberg. You'll be fine. Prince Henry Koforidua says, in a serious country, the roads and highways minister should be facing prosecution for causing financial loss to the state by stopping payment of tolls at the toll booths. Now, the finance minister is also complaining about how the abolishment of the toll booths is having a negative consequence on the government's finance. The future is pregnant, the big issue. So you can also be heard. I've already given you the WhatsApp line. You can see it on your screens. Let me go back to Samuel Bequin. Samuel, you're making a quick point. And then once you are done with that, we will get to this report on our oil revenue that you went. Welcome back to the big issue on City 973 and also on City TV. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. As always, you can join us via WhatsApp line 0549 986 996 and 0550585832. 0549 986 996 and 0550585832. You can also join us via our Facebook pages, City TV GH and City 973 on Facebook as well. You can leave your comments there. I have a couple that I will run through discussing the economy, currency, budget issues, fuel, all aspects of it, all the issues that have come up this week, because that is what Ghanaians are talking about this week a lot, the economy and how it's impacting them. So I'm doing this with Dr. Thea Champong. He's an economist and political risk analyst, and Samuel Bequin, economist and extractive governance expert. And just to take a couple more of your messages before I continue the conversation. This one says, Anyagri Gideon from Garu says the government started on a good note, but things have changed. They have completely failed. Prices of commodities keep on increasing. Security is poorer. Salaries remain constant. And this is a killer government, he says. I totally disagree with the president as regards the payment of e-levy. He should crack the whip by cutting down on salaries of Article 71 office holders by 50%. This will save the economy of the country. This is coming from Wilson. Aria from the mountains says, Dr. Baumia, please take the key from the old IGP and hand it over to the new one. Our businesses are suffering. Alan in Chantai says, well, he wants to know how we got to say the cedi is the worst performing currency. Well, Alan, all you have to do is just check on Bloomberg. You'll be fine. Prince Henry Koforidua says, in a serious country, the roads and highways minister should be facing prosecution for causing financial loss to the state by stopping payment of tolls at the toll booths. Now, the finance minister is also complaining about how the abolishment of the toll booths is having a negative consequence on the government's finance. The future is pregnant, the big issue. So you can also be heard. I've already given you the WhatsApp line. You can see it on your screens. Let me go back to Samuel Bequin. Samuel, you're making a quick point. And then once you are done with that, we will get to this report on our oil revenue that you worked on with Dr. Thua Champong. Some of the findings are mind-blowing, to say the least. Finish your point.
Thank you, Godfred. I was just saying that if you go to the budget and you see some of the cost of projects that we are contracting as well, I mean, you would notice that sometimes we just probably have to look at, retooling our estimations sometimes. And I think before, when I used to argue with government staff and say, don't you think this is too big? They will tell you this is just a budget. But whenever that budget has been approved, they will spend to that particular amount that was allocated in the budget. And I think that's where the challenge is. And as I have said, I think the decision on how we select programs into our budget should be changed. It needs to be much more evidence-based. And that's where the challenge is. If you look at the next, it says Appendix 10C, approved list of projects to be financed from external non-concessional loans. We are talking about new hospitals. Aside Agenda 111, we are saying we are going to construct and equip 3 hospitals at Efijasi, Ayesu, and Offenso. All of these are districts. All of these are districts. Are we saying that aside the district hospital we are building Agenda 111, we are still going to build these hospitals as well? Do we need them now? I think that's the question we ask ourselves. And there are many of them. You sit down and you think about it. You said, look, I thought this government program was actually, dealing with that. Why are we still having new programs with the same names in the budget? If you look at the STEM schools, for instance, personally, I would ask myself, do we need STEM schools now, or we need to expand the science, lab schools, the science resource schools, and make it STEM instead of building a whole new STEM schools? How much does it cost? Could that money be used for something else that is also in need now? But because probably and most times it is actually, driven by politics, we still put some of these things in our budget and spend to the amount allocated to them. So I think it's all about the budget. We need to sit back, look at the programs, how we select the programs, and make sure we do not just throw anything in the budget and balloon the expenditure on the budget.
All right. So now let me come to this report that you just worked on recently. And Dr. Thua Champong and Samuel Bekwin worked on the assessment of the management and use of Ghana's petroleum revenues between 2011 and 2020. Now, this was done for the Public Interest and Accountability Committee and submitted recently. And basically the reason why this is important is because, as we know, we get a lot of our money that feeds the economy from our oil revenue. And some of the findings are quite interesting. That is why I wanted us to go there to see how it impacts the economy. And since these two gentlemen were part of it, they'll be in a much better place to explain these things and the impact on the economy and how it's constraining the economy. So the report focused on 4 key areas. So it focused on petroleum production, sales, and revenue collection, focused on revenue allocation, distribution, and utilization, focused on the management of the Ghana Petroleum Funds, and then institutional assessment of petroleum revenue management. On the key findings, for instance, on petroleum production, sales, and revenue collection, is extensive. I'm just going to pick on a few and then ask my panelists to elaborate a bit. Says that Ghana, as of 2021, has enacted the necessary legal framework to govern its oil industry. However, in respect of decommissioning, regulations are yet to be passed. It also talks about Ghana has signed 17 petroleum agreements with various international and local oil companies since the early 2000s. Of these, 3 producing fields, namely the Jubilee, Chineboa, Enyera, Intome, and Sankofa Jinyame, account for petroleum revenues as of end 2020. The data shows that total production from Ghana's 3 fields peaked in 2020. Production will continuously decline if nothing is done through new infill developments on these existing fields or new fields coming on stream. Peaking is further compounded by reservoir challenges leading to production losses on some fields. At the same time, the above surface includes FPSO reliability challenges and delayed gas processing infrastructure, forcing gas reinjection, which is ultimately negatively impacting well performance. Theo, can you explain what this means? We have 17 petroleum agreements, only 3 are producing, and you are saying if this continues, we are going to struggle?
Absolutely, and that really is the main point from that piece that you read, that we've signed various agreements with international oil companies or IOCs. However, actual commercial production is currently coming from only 3 of them. Jubilee, which started in 2010 December, and then we had the 10 field coming on in 2016, and then Sankofa coming on in 2017. Both of those fields collectively now is giving us, as of the end of 2020 rather, just around 183,000 barrels a day. However, when we looked at the data, what was quite clear is that the production from the 3 fields that I sort of indicated, when you add them all together, indicates that the trend has basically peaked or plateaued. And if we don't add any new production on stream, or do new drilling, what we call infill drilling around the existing facilities, and bring new production again on stream, then in a few years' time, there might not be much to say by way of an oil and gas industry in Ghana. And it's even sort of further compounded by what is happening externally with the energy transition, where some assessments indicate that you would need less oil and gas in the global energy mix, and that ultimately means lower oil prices, which at a project level then means that countries like Ghana that sit at the middle end of the cost curve may not have their oil and gas being produced at all. So that's really what that simple statement means.
That's still complicated. For the layman, you are saying we need to find money to explore more wells, but also the global attitude towards oil fuel is changing. So we could get stuck somewhere in the middle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we have a window of opportunity to maximize the value of the resources we currently have with the oil. But
is there an observation of the potential to do that? Are we preparing to do that, or it's static?
No, so we have made moves, and some contracts have been signed, including even the likes of GMPC now wanting to actively take stakes in our oil blocks and produce them if the international oil companies aren't willing to do so. So to be fair, some certain actions are being taken in that regard. The challenge really is that we're not likely to have any new field come on stream, at least in the next 2 or 3 years, and if we don't add anything to what we already have from the current stock, then your production is going to go down. And that means less revenue, it means less oil-funded projects, and it means having to go and look for money from somewhere to meet our development needs.
Okay. Let me talk to Samuel about money, revenue allocation, because it is for the economy, revenue allocation is what we are looking for, distribution and utilization. And this report makes some interesting findings. Now, you estimate that about $31 billion of value has been generated from all of Ghana's 3 producing fields, comprising both entitlements due to the contractor parties and the Ghana Group. The achieved selling prices of the Ghana Group's crude entitlement was closely aligned to traded Brent prices, reflecting a continuous and commendable effort to generate value for the country. The Ghana Group has earned $6.5 billion in total petroleum receipts between 2011 and 2020, equivalent to 9.97% of 2020 GDP. I'm a layman here, but Samuel, if we have earned $31 billion of value generated from the three producing fields as of 2020, the Ghana group earned just 6.5. Is that
That's
fair?
Godfred, I think. I mean, can you hear me better?
I can hear you.
Great. I think just a quick explanation of some of the basics before we delve into it. So as we are here, we know that there may be oil, but for us to be able to get the data correct, we invite some firms from outside, usually outside, to come and take the risk. When they take the risk and they find oil, great. If they don't find oil, the cost of taking the risk is paid by them or borne by them. So basically, when you bring these companies in, they put their money in, they develop the field. Automatically, government law says that once they come in and they do the exploration, they sign the contract, government have now that under the new law about between 10 and 15% free interest in the block. And then we will also get our royalties and some other fees as well. So when they take the risk and they find oil, going forward, government have the right to, take some more interest in the field. In most of the field, like Jubilee, our interest is 3.75, the one that we are paying, whilst the free interest is, I think, 10%. So in Jubilee, for instance, we have paid about 3.75 interest. That one we pay for the cost of exploration and development as well, and then the extraction itself, which is the production. So from the 31 billion we have estimated, the companies that came in to take all those risks have earned 31 billion less the 6 billion we have earned. So yes, it is true that we have estimated 31 billion. They put in their money. They have a bigger share from the oil than we have. And therefore, as a result of that, they make more money. From the 31 billion there, we've estimated that the ones that we have paid money and the free interest, our share in the oil and gas fields gives us more money than royalties. That's the one that gives us a bigger share of our money, of the 6.5 billion that we have earned. And then before we come to royalties is, we get royalties because we own the field, and therefore it's a free money. We get that as well in the sector. Before even we come to corporate income tax and other revenues as well. So yes, 31 billion, we have 6.5 billion as in terms of the total government take, in terms of revenues that have come in, including taxes, including non-tax, including royalties, and also the investment that we have made in those fields. What does this tell us? This tells us that going forward in new agreements, we need to invest more so that we can also earn more from those fields.
Comparatively, are those numbers fair, like with other African countries?
I would say that there have been estimation of government take in many other countries. Nigeria does over 40%, but because Nigeria started extracting oil from 1960s. Equatorial Guinea does, I think, over 30%. Angola does more as well. Some of these countries have been extracting oil for some time. We have first 10 years. I believe that in the early days, if we had invested more, we would have had more. Now that this has provided a very, good evidence-based lesson to us, I think we need to invest more in the oil and gas sector. So when somebody comes to take the risk, or before we sign the agreement, instead of saying we want 5%, we should be able to take more than 5%, maybe 10%, 15%, in a very fair and diligent manner. And I think that's what we have to do to be able to earn more in the oil and gas field.
And that brings me to the part of the conversation that affects everybody and the economy. That is, how are we spending the money? What did you find? Are we spending the money properly? Is it helping the economy? Can more be done? Samuel?
On how to spend the money. Sorry, we have clear rules on how to, Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. We were getting a bit of a cut, but you are clear now.
Great. We have clear rules on how to spend the oil money, and this is enshrined in the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. And that clear rule states that when all oil money comes in, we put it in one fund called Petroleum Holding Fund. And this is how it is distributed. We send part of the money to GMPC. We send part to the budget. We send part to savings when we have more. And we send part to future generations, which is, we call it Ghana Heritage Fund. These are the 4 areas that we spend. Let me speak about GMPC. Out of this, about 6.5 billion, GMPC have received about $2 billion over the years. But that $2 billion, part of it have gone into payment of our interest in that particular field, in the fields that we have invested in. And part of it, which is also gone into GMPC's own operations, salaries, and other things. About 2.5 billion have gone into the budget. And this is where we can talk more about. And I will leave the GMPC part for Tio, Dr. Champon, to talk about it. The 2.5 billion that have come in, we've invested, I would say, some part in the free SHS. The free SHS has been one of the areas that have received the monies that I can say that if you want to do an inclusive analysis, it's one of the most inclusive way of benefiting Ghanaians. The other part, we've invested more in the roads and other infrastructure. But of course, there is a lot of waste in the roads and other infrastructure as well. You will see that government roads are giving contract. We counterpart the oil money with other funds. The road contractor will say we were able to disburse oil money. But then when it comes to the other counterpart funding from government, we didn't get it. Therefore, the road has stalled. And then after some years, the rain will fall and destroy everything that the contractor have done. We go back and then tell the contractor, why don't you bring other estimates on how much this will cost, and then additional monies. What we've realized is that we also pay some money, and then we delay the payment of contractors. Contractors calculate a lot of interest on the payment, comes in and tells us that because you delayed payment, this is how much you are supposed to pay me now, and that leads to higher cost. So the problem is that underlying issues with the budget already, we brought in oil money and put it on top. The underlying issues is causing the oil money not to be used efficiently. It is quite clear the oil money, aside probably free SHS, even that we have challenges in there. The oil money has not been used efficiently. Of course, it's not all dark and gloom. When it comes to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, they receive some part of oil money, and they have been able to use that to invest in, Kotoka Terminal 3. And the Terminal 3 investment is already generating some returns on that. I would say that was put into good use. But generally, I would say there are a lot of issues with our procurement, with how we prepare the programs under the budget, and then we put oil money in there. In some cases, PIAC even went around and they noticed that who is supposed to be the supervisor of this project didn't know where the project is. Wow. So even the communicating of the project, it has been challenging. And I think because we already had a very inefficient spending system in the budget, and we throw in more monies in there. So we have suggested in this report that for you to receive part of that oil money that comes through the budget, that the government should develop an approach of one, you prepare the project, you do your procurement process to make sure you are allowed to award before you submit for oil money. And therefore, once you have estimated and have proper monitoring and evaluation plan, you know that the project starts and it will receive oil money till it ends, so that we don't battle with delay payment, we don't battle with any issues about inefficiencies. And that is what can help us to put our oil money into an efficient use.
Dr. Champon, someone makes reference to the fact that you are going to handle the GMPC side, because I'm looking at 16.16 under the management of the Ghana Petroleum Funds, and we find that 74% of withdrawals have been used for debt repayment, while 21% has been allocated to the contingency fund to deal with national emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Interestingly, only 4% has been utilized to shore up APFA shortfalls. And your point 16 says these debt repayments are symptomatic of developments within the Ghanaian economy over the past decade. due to low domestic revenue mobilization, increased interest payments have occasioned excessive borrowing, both domestically and externally, to meet budgetary shortfalls. Ghana's debt servicing needs have become expensive due to the high coupon rate and volatility of the cedi, the local currency. Given the historically low returns, there's a need to rethink the Ghana Petroleum Fund's investment strategy to generate comparable returns to a benchmark portfolio. I'm reading this and I'm thinking, so we don't know what we are doing with the money?
It's an interesting question you asked. I'll come to that briefly, but I just wanted to make a quick remark from where Sami left off from. So if you want to see the impact of the oil revenues on the economy, you would need to look at it like in two channels, right? At the big macro level, you have oil revenues or oil exports constituting about 28% of our total export base as a country. And that is significantly improving the country's sort of trade balances, right? So that's at the 30,000 feet or very high level. And then where Sami came in also then was, okay, if you actually look at it at the micro level and the impact of the actual spend, for example, within the budget and within other line items of areas, what is the evidence of the impact of that in these areas, right? And this is where it gets interesting in the sense that to a large extent, if you take, for example, the agricultural sector, and remember that we've been saying that if we want to reduce unemployment, if we want to diversify the economy, then one of the surest ways of doing this is by sort of modernizing agriculture and developing or deepening the value chains. But this is where when you actually look at the allocations, right, only 8% of the component that went into the budget, the ABFA, went into agriculture. As much as 54% of the allocations went into roads and other infrastructure. And even the quality of the roads leaves a lot to be desired. And again, it's interesting because when the Petroleum Revenue Management Law was being passed, PIAC went around in 2016, thereabouts. So the law was passed in 2011, but then in 2016, PIAC did this study where they wanted to find out from Ghanaians, what do you want your oil money to be spent on? And if you look at the ranking of priorities across all the regions of Ghana, consistently everyone said that we want the oil money to be used for agriculture and to support industry, because you can see the linkages and the value chain effects and potentially the employment creation effect also there. But what the evidence from this report actually shows is that only 8% of the money actually was used, right, for agriculture, and most of it went to build or to develop roads, some of them of dubious value, and some of them you don't even see the productivity enhancing effects of that. So it is no wonder that at the micro level, we are not seeing any evidence of the impact of oil revenue on, for example, say the agriculture sector or the health sector by and large. So I just thought I add that clarity. The question then you asked also then is about the bit of the money that we put into for savings. So out of every 100 cedis that we collect in oil revenues, 70 cedis or about 71 cedis goes to the support the budget, so the annual budget funding amount, ABFA, and then another 21 cedis is meant to go into the stabilization fund. This is to say, if there are years where you have like shortfalls in revenue because of oil prices going down, you go and take money from the stabilization fund and use that to support the budget. And then the remaining 9% or 9 cedis goes to support, right, what we call the heritage fund for the future generations or intergenerational equity. So the 21% that goes into the stabilization is where, when we did the analysis, we actually found that almost 2/3 or over 2/3 of that, about 75%, was actually used to withdraw or to pay existing debt. And again, we do not see, even in the debt repayment, the debt schedules, and the reprioritization, you don't see that again impacting or trying to change the structural imperatives of the economy. And the problems or the root causes really goes to the fact that since we became a lower middle income country in 2010, 2011, we've just been borrowing a lot from the external market. To date, we have borrowed in excess of $15 billion with these Eurobonds, and most of the debt repayments, including from the stabilization fund, have been used to service some of these, debt obligations. So that's why you don't see much of an impact of the oil revenues on the overall economy of Ghana.
Interesting submission. And I want to, since we are there, bring in Nana Mwesi. He's the executive director of the Institute for Energy Security. Because I want since we are now discussing the oil sector, we wanted to look at the impact on fuel prices as well, because that is something that has come up significantly this week. The prices just keep going up and up and up. What is going on? And it is predicted that it will get even higher. Theo, I know you have done some work on this. It looks like Russia and Ukraine are having their problems, but it is biting us. But I'll get to you. Nana Mwesi, good morning. Nana Mwesi, can you hear me, please? Nana Mwesi.
Good morning, Godfred.
Thank you very much for joining us. Nana Mwesi the seventh is the executive director of the Institute of Energy Security. Nana, it's been a week where the conversation about fuel prices and what to do has come up, because at the moment, it looks like every 2 or 3 days, we are just going higher and higher. Of course, external factors are responsible for this, but at what point should we really enter crisis mode regarding the upward trend in fuel prices in Ghana?
Thank you very much, Godfred. Good morning to you, to your viewers and listeners. I think that fuel price impacts on every facet of our life because it affects the cost of goods and services, and it's a key driver of inflation. And so anytime we see prices go up on the domestic market, we must be concerned that cost of living is going to go high. I'm sure Dr. Theo and Co, the economists, will give you more of this as we go along. However, let me correct an impression here. The current surge in prices we're experiencing cannot just be linked to the international oil or gas price. You will realize that our city has been depreciating every passing day. And so if you want to look at the key determinant of fuel price on the domestic market, you are looking at about 3 areas. It could be the international price. It could also be the forex exposure of the country, your local currency against the major trading currency, the US dollar. Then also the taxes, the levies or subsidies that is introduced on this product. So you are looking at 3 areas. Currently, what we are seeing is as a result of the forex losses we are seeing on exposure, as well as the international oil and gas price.
Nana Mwesi?
I can hear you, Godfred.
Yes, you are making a point, please.
Yes, I concluded by saying that the issues we are going through now is as a result of both the depreciation of the local currency against the US dollar, then also the international oil and natural gas prices.
Okay. All right. So if you look at that, there are those who have said we asked for price deregulation. And that is, so sometimes it becomes difficult to directly blame the government and say, well, government has increased fuel prices or this or that. From where you sit, this conversation about price deregulation, was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Is it something we should be looking at again now?
Godfrey, you know very well what we've gone through as a country by way of introduction of subsidies. It kept our energy sector debt soaring, and at a point it impacted even on our electricity distribution as well. And so the IES is for full deregulation so that both the marketers and the importers will have full cost recovery. Because anytime we subsidize a product, what we are doing is we are creating a debt to be paid. But deregulation is not bad in itself because you are allowing market forces to dictate what price should be. However, government must put in the right mechanism to ensure that it doesn't get out of control. Because from June 2015, when deregulation was introduced, up to January 2017, the price of a liter of gasoline almost stayed the same. In June 2015, it was 3.82. The moment deregulation kicked in, it went to 3.6. At the beginning of 2017, gasoline was 3.65. And so for a period of 1.5 years, we saw some form of stability in fuel price. That period was so counted as a period of petroleum price deregulation. But the cedi was somehow stable, and we were also cushioned by international prices that was almost stabilized or falling. And so we believe that if government will work at the forex exposure or the forward value of the cedi against the US dollar, it will cushion us. And of course, within the same price build-up, there are some levies and taxes that are assigned to the tax of stabilizing prices. One is the price stabilization recovery levy. The way it's applied is not being able to stabilize price.
Why?
Let me show you something. Between last year, February, and this year, February, prices of fuel in Kenya has not increased by more than 24%. In Ghana, it's gone up by more than 60%. When you go to South Africa, it's not gone up by more than 30%. When you go to Egypt, it's gone up by roughly 17%. In Kenya, they didn't just look at the stabilization levy, they went into the stabilization fund to cushion consumers. And so you will call it a form of subsidy because you have some funds sitting there, a fund that was, generated by taxing Ghanaians through the levy or taxing Kenyans through the levy. And so that money in the fund was what was used to, subsidize during the hard times we are going through in Kenya. And so in Ghana, we have the same fund. Just by removing the levy, doesn't bring prices down. It's yes, of course, that. But then let's go into the fund to cushion consumers. That is how we can subsidize and still not create debt for the country because the fund is within there.
What is the difficulty in applying the fund?
I'm sure you understand the time. It may be difficult for government because for revenue purposes, they want to use the money for something else. But then what you are doing is you are also becoming unpopular because prices of petroleum products have been used by the politicians themselves, both past and immediate, and the current, to do politics. And he said you can stop it. And so when the sea price go up, consumers and Ghanaians will not be happy with you as a government. It doesn't just impact on transportation, it impacts on cost of goods and services. It impacts on the disposable income of Ghanaians. It squeezes them. And so government may want to look at that. After all, we're also seeing, some form of increased revenue from our crude oil sales. And so there's some for that. Maybe government will also want to consider that end.
That's an interesting option. Just stay for me. Let me ask you this question. Theo, you heard Nana Mwesi's point on the use of the stabilization fund and his theory on why we are not using ours. What is your take?
I mean, look, it all goes back to the fiscal issues we're discussing here.
But is that not what the money was supposed to be used for? What is the difficulty?
It was meant to be used to cushion consumers. We know all of that. But the reality is that these funds are often commingled and used for other government expenditure. And when the time comes for us to actually revert to using that for that purpose, there's nothing there. And that's just what it is currently. But I think Nana has also made pretty much all the points, the fact that we can redo or relook at some of the taxes. For me, particularly on LPG, because I think the demand profile and the consumption there on LPG is relatively elastic, and consumers tend to feel a bit of a pinch on that. I also think the FX regime that underpins the imports could be looked at, where importers could be offered relatively sort of the interbank rate, right, which the Bank of Ghana works with, and that can go away to ameliorate some of the effects. The prices on the international market, it is what it is, but the fundamental, or one of the fundamental problems also is the fact that over the years, we were or have had a refinery that is barely functional. We've turned the refinery into a tank farm, and instead of actually processing crude, and if we were doing that and had been consistently doing that over the years, at least that would have, saved on some of the expensive monies that we spend importing petroleum products, into the country. And all of that would have gone a long way to cushion us as a country.
Okay, interesting take. But arresting the currency, not going to happen anytime soon. Stabilization fund, as you said, has been commingled. Nana Mwesi, then we should just sit back and wait for the prices, for the markets to heal itself?
Well, that is to say that government is clueless, especially with sit and watch. But I think there are ways to go about this. With respect to LPG, for us as IES, we don't understand why we produce almost half of our national consumption, yet we see it going up. We get LPG from Atwabo, and it's priced the same as that of imported ones. It doesn't make sense, Godfrey, because we've covered, we've made the freight cost nil of a salt. We are getting this LPG from natural gas, which is almost free for us from the shore, from offshore. And so if our own local LPG is priced almost the same as that of international, or imported ones, then what is the use of our refining, mechanism here? Sometimes the same Atwabo product sells sells higher than that of the imported one. And you ask why?
Really?
Meanwhile, the propane in our domestic LPG is higher than that of the imported one. We need less propane. We need more of the butane. And so if we are serious and we want to see prices go up, the first thought to look at is our indigenous end. And our LPG to sell lesser than the imported ones because freight cost has been covered. You're almost getting that product for free. You have ceded it to a private hand whose interest, like all of us would do, is to just make money. And they control more than 50% of the market.
Okay, interesting scenario that Nana Mwesi is painting. Samuel, I'm sure you've listened to Theo and Nana Mwesi. Do you share the same sentiments on how we can arrest the the energy crisis that we seem to be heading towards, arrest the currency, save the situation. But the question I ask is, can the government afford this based on the analysis you have done?
Thank you, Godfrey. It is quite difficult now. The fiscals don't look good, and that is why the government had reinstated the taxes that they had earlier, taken out from the fuel price. What I know is that in terms of crisis, that is when you plan for a longer term to avoid future crises as well. And I agree completely with Nana Mosi. The challenge we are having now, it's not only the international price that has been touted every time by some people in government. The international price have always been noted to be volatile, to go up and down. And the volatility of oil price is one of the most acute compared to all other products like cocoa or even the minerals. It goes up, and as we see it at 111 now, we could be seeing it in the next 5 months at 30. It's so fast. And therefore, that is the need why we instituted the stabilization levy at the downstream. The stabilization levy had 2 or 3 objectives. One, to make sure the prices of oil is across the whole country probably is the same, so that it takes up the transportation cost for. So if you buy fuel at 7 cities at Accra, you should be buying the same price in the north as well. That was my understanding. And also, in times of higher prices, it's supposed to be something that we can rely on. But the question, as we have said, the fiscals has always been the underlying problem is the fiscals, and it all comes to the politics. But my advice is this: at this time, this is the time we have to plan for the LPG sector to make sure either we help Ghana Gas to expand the facility, either a new, not additional facility, because we have gas that we are unable to take in the Sankofa field. They are giving us only 5 years. That if we are supposed to take, let's say 1 million scarf this year, and we take 500 because of our capacity, they give us 5 years to take the additional 5 years. Otherwise, we lose it completely. That is the agreement we have with Sankofa. So we have to build. This is the time we have to think about building a new facility. And for Ghana Gas project, it's something that you can build easily because it will pay for itself. We build a new facility to expand the processing of these gas into LPGs and others, so that we can actually hope to reduce the price. But let me say that the prices that we are talking about is as a result of bad contracting. It's as a result of bad contracting at the upstream. And that's why we always talk about these corruption issues. That was the reason why we're still buying gas at a very higher price. Even at the upstream, government has eliminated most of its own taxes, including, I think, royalties as well in the upstream. And even still, we are buying it at a higher price than the imported ones. And I think that's what we have to look at. But my advice is that in crisis, that is when you plan for a longer term solution to avoid the same issue in the future. But for the fiscals that we have now, it is no way that we are going to afford an elimination of taxes now, or even ensuring that we pay any subsidies. So we may have to, brace for further difficulties and really hope that the market will actually solve itself or correct itself to come back to normal. And that's where the challenge may be.
Listening to all of you, the ordinary Ghanaian might not be ready to wait for the market, looking at where the prices are going. What would be the immediate solution for government to look at? If you the quickest fix, it might not necessarily be the best in this regard, but to wait for the market to fix itself might take a while.
Yes, it will take a while for the international market to correct itself. But then we can speed up the process of halting the consistent, persistent form of our local currency against the US dollar. And so if we are able to at least hold the forex, then of course it can cushion against the rising international prices. That is one. Yes, calling for a removal of tax or levy at this point is difficult. We all know the time that we're in when we are chasing yield levy. It's difficult to take, another levy off. But then I believe that we can go into the fund, the stabilization fund, to as a soft, a way to stop that, fast fall. Because in the next window, if we're not careful, prices will go up by more than 70 pesos per liter.
Really?
It's coming with, of course, because already that's sold in on international market have gone beyond dollars per metric ton, same as gas oil. The CD has depreciated by more than 4% since the last 5 days, and we have another week to go. And so if the trend continues, then it means that we are going for a free fall. And that is quite dangerous. So let's fix that forest bit to start with, and let's get ready to plant new ideas, just like Mr. Quinn mentioned, because we'll find ourselves in such a situation one day. And so we'll plan now. It might take 3-4 years to build a new refinery, to build a new gas processing plant. But that is to say that we are ready for the next crisis that will come, because this wind will pass one day, but it will repeat itself if we don't plan. And that's where we have the problem.
Thank you very much. Nanam Wesi, Executive Director of the Institute of Energy Affairs. For
the Government Institute for Energy Security.
Energy Security. Sorry. Nanam Wesi, forgive me. You confused me with that prediction of.
I'm sorry.
Of the fuel going up.
Sorry, but I'm a bearer of bad news. That is not what I think to do.
Again. Thank you very much. But Theo, let me come to you. So, bad news coming up on the horizon. Listening to Nanam Wesi, but you mentioned Tor, and I wanted to hear on your thoughts on what the difficulty is. Someone made the reference to the fact that it's now basically a tank farm. We've heard of different strategies to try and revitalize Tor, to get it working again. Successive governments have failed to find a workable solution to the Tor conundrum. Last time I spoke to somebody in your space as well, he said, find a private person and sell Tor, and then watch it come back to life. If you fix Tor, you fix half the country's energy problems. That's what he said. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I fully align with those thoughts, and I have been making this call for probably over 10 or so years now, particularly because I also actually used to work at the refinery. I did my national service there.
Oh.
So I know all of some of the issues at the refinery. Look, it comes down to the politics. Let's not kid ourselves. It comes down to certain sort of vested interest within the value chain, which ensures that for some people it's more profitable to import the product into the country than for us to refine internally, even if we're not using our own crude. So remember, we don't necessarily need to use the crude that we're producing in Ghana. We could, but even if we imported the crude from, say, Nigeria or other places and brought it in and refined, it would still save us far more and would improve the energy security of the country than what currently, pertains. Tor needs money. It needs working capital. It needs new sort of operational management structures. And I think part of the long-term solution to it really is trying to divest or privatize the asset. The government doesn't need to sell it 100%. It could still own some stake in the new revised entity, some sort of minority stake in a special purpose vehicle. That can be done. But what that allows that to do is the new investors would come in and they will be able to rejuvenate the refinery. They will be able to produce not just petrol and diesel, but other petroleum products that are required in the country. And ultimately, that is going to ease a lot of the pressure that we see on petrol prices, but also even the exchange rate, as well. What to do with toll is not a problem. We know what to do. It is the politics that has kept us where we are, where unfortunately the refinery that is meant to refine crude has become somewhat of a tank farm.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Theo, for that. Theo will stay with me for this final segment of the show, where we will speak to Dr. Alexander Votravers. He's a security expert. He'll be joining us from Switzerland as we delve into the Ukraine issue, as well as Ambassador Kwabena Seydankwa, who is the special advisor to the Foreign Affairs Minister. As we know, Ghana has been very busy. Yesterday, 24 more persons arrived in Accra, evacuated by the government in collaboration with other partners from Ukraine. We'll be looking at what is happening with that particular situation, and also discuss the military incursions that is happening and the diplomatic conversations that are currently ongoing. Stay with us. The Big Issue will be right back. Welcome back to The Big Issue as we enter the final phase of our conversation on the economy, international politics. That also affects the economy. And we are zooming in on the situation in the Ukraine. It's one that has left a sour taste in the mouth of a lot of people, and its impact on the global economy cannot be discounted. Two countries who are heavily vested in the global economy, as particularly in the agric side and also in the natural gas side. Russia, especially Ukraine, on the agric side for wheat and grain, as well as other things that come from the construction sector. So it's not as simple as that. Also, we have the bit of the evacuation exercise that the government of Ghana is undertaking in that country, trying to get as many citizens who want to leave out as possible. They've done quite a few things. We're going to try and get an update on that and what the future is going forward. Ghana voted quite strongly against the aggression at the United Nations this week. We'll try and understand what Ghana's position, because we had some countries abstain and we had one outright vote against, which was from Eritrea. We'll try and understand why Africa voted the way it is, why Ghana voted the way it is, and also try and understand the Russia angle and the Ukraine angle from the military operation side. We talked to a former Lieutenant General in that space to understand what is going on. But your messages have kept coming, and 0549986996, 0549986996, and 0550-585832. Let me just take a few more, and then we'll begin that conversation. The government needs money. Why won't they restore road tolls? Because every day we forsake those tolls. That is free money the government is losing. Another one is asking, Godfred, why don't we see reductions in the price of fuel in Ghana when we have reductions on the world market? AU Farouk Tamale says, definitely no wonder the price of LPG has gone up. This government just wants to kill us all, is what he is saying. And this one says the government must cut down. That's Eriko Konu from La Paz on its expenditure. Felix from Airport Hills says the sad reality is our expenditure is not sustainable. For example, the U.S. with a GDP of 20 trillion spent 750 million on their presidency. In Ghana, our GDP is $74 billion, while we spent $470 million on the presidency. We are just being dragged into a ditch. Good morning, Godfrey. This is Nene from Tema. He says the truth is that this government dug this endless hole for itself. As they have said in the past, they have the men and can bring the economy to life. I don't believe that, though. More messages that have come in from James Amable in Dansuman. He says, what at all is at all that governments past and present cannot fix? If it were private property, it wouldn't be so difficult for them to do. Anane from Awu, she says, our leaders should know that money is being generated within the economy can do a lot of things for the country if unnecessary expenditure is highly managed. Our leaders are not being faithful to us, the people. Anane is not very happy this morning. Nane Kwamwa Boating from Ablikuma Central, aka E-Levy is good. That's an interesting nickname you have. E-Levy is good. Says, good morning, Godfred. We cannot downplay the economic impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We pray this ends. If not, the economic impact will be dire. And he's sending birthday wishes to Sandra Osei. You have snuck in a birthday wish on my program, but no problem. So happy birthday to Sandra Osei of the University of Education, Winneba. So keep the messages coming as we delve into that. So I'll be joined by Ambassador Kwabno Sedankwa. Good morning. He's Special Advisor to the Foreign Affairs Minister. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. And then Dr. Alexandra Vutraves. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
You're doing absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He's joining us from the Global Studies Institute, University of Geneva. He's the editor-in-chief of the Revue Militaire Suisse. I will begin the conversation, though, from Ambassador Kwabno Sedankwa, who advises the Foreign Affairs Minister, just so we can catch an update. So, Ambassador, let's catch up on a couple of things. Ghana set out a plan to return as many of its citizens who wanted to return as possible. How many have you been able to get to Ghana so far?
Well, I believe at the top of the show, you mentioned the last number of our nationals who returned to Ghana. I think the important number is actually the numbers who have moved out of Ukraine into the countries that we had arranged with to receive them, including Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Moldova, and also Czech Republic, because we moved the nationals who arrived in Slovakia to the Czech Republic. And in addition, I think a very important development is the announcement by the Russian government to move foreign students from Sumy into Russia, and in the case of some countries, to Sweden. As you will recall, at the beginning of the operations, we had called on the two sides to initiate a humanitarian pause. And now we do have the humanitarian corridor. And so our nationals who were essentially stuck and unable to move out are now in the position of being taken out of harm's way. So that is the picture as we speak. I think we're in a position to see that we will be able to move all our nationals from Ukraine from harm's way.
Just to be clear, the focus has been on students. Are they the ones in the majority, or you are looking to also move regular migrants, Ghanaians who had perhaps been living and working in Ukraine for years and were not there to study, to other parts, to other countries, as you've mentioned? Or this is
right.
Purely a student-based operation?
I was very careful in saying nationals because we're concerned about the safety and security of all Ghanaians in Ukraine. So that has been the focus, to move. Of course, the majority of them are university students, and but we are moving out all Ghanaian nationals who desire to leave, just as, of course, civilians in Ukraine are also moving into Poland and other places.
And what kind of assistance is being offered to these students as they try and settle in these countries that you've moved them to, albeit temporarily?
Right. objective is not for them to settle. So usually when you arrive at the border points, if you do not have a passport, then it is the responsibility of our officials at those border points to ensure that you have a travel certificate. Without that, you cannot enter into another country. So that is the first step. The other step, of course, is that at those reception centers, our officials are then able to move those nationals to the various capitals where arrangements are then made for flights out of those countries. Now, as I said at the beginning, for instance, we have our nationals being moved from the Slovak Republic once they arrive there to Prague, where our embassy is. So we are able to offer more facilities. So we provide accommodation and food, and then, the tickets with which people can travel. Now, in the case of those who, for whom tickets are purchased and who then do not take advantage of them, obviously they are either settling in or moving to other countries in Europe. And we are not focused on that at the moment, because every minute counts, and we have to focus on those who are willing to return home once they are out of Ukraine.
Let's talk about Ghana's position on the conflict itself, which culminated in its very strongly worded statement initially when this started, and then also in its strong vote at the United Nations. What is informing Ghana's position on this? Because we have seen other African countries who some have abstained. We had Eritrea, of course, who voted based on their own foreign policy strategy. What are we looking at as Ghana?
Right. First of all, I have to say that Ghana enjoys friendly relations with all the member states of the United Nations. We have very strong relations with Russia, with Ukraine, with every member state. And so we go into this from that perspective. From the beginning, we had called on the Russian Federation to, seek to address its concerns, which they had articulated through peaceful means, through dialogue. And we supported all the processes, including the Normandy process, which brought together, in addition to France and Germany, Ukraine and Russia.
We seem to have a small hitch with Ambassador Osei Danquah's connection. We'll try and get back to him. He was just updating us on the Ghana position. He's the special advisor to the foreign minister. Well, we have him back. Ambassador, please continue.
And then also at the level of foreign minister. So we were very supportive of that. What we did in the Security Council was to, because the Russian Federation had assured the international community that they had no intention to attack Ukraine, we had supported a resolution to have an open debate in the Security Council to ensure that, there were no unanticipated accidents that might lead to war. And that debate took place. Now, once the Russian Federation decided to recognize the two so-called breakaway regions, then Ghana criticized the move because we also believe in the principles and values of the United Nations Charter. And as you know, the Charter guarantees the territorial integrity, the political independence of all member states, and it calls for the resolution of disputes by peaceful means. the sovereign equality of states is a fundamental aspect of the Charter. Now, the Charter, as we keep saying, is the insurance policy for small states. So imagine that a state like Ghana has the same value, importance, and rights as the biggest state in the United Nations. That has served the world very well. And we truly believe that from the position of principle, but also in terms of our own national interest, all member states should respect the Charter. Every decision, every action that undermines the credibility of the United Nations and its Charter is a danger to all of us as member states, and also to the ability of the United Nations to contribute to our sustainable development goals. So that is the perspective from which Ghana has made these decisions in all the meetings, including the emergency special session of the General Assembly, which had the votes that you just referred to.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Kwabena Said. I'll come back to you in a bit. Let me talk to Dr. Alexander Vutravers, who is our security expert. We've had this invasion, yes, that is what it is, for almost 10 days now. From the European perspective and also from the security perspective, what have the Russians been doing with this mission in Ukraine? We've seen reports of shelling in certain places, a slowdown in a military convoy here, Ukrainian defenses. What exactly do you see happening militarily? What are they trying to do?
Okay, this is a very classic military assault move, combined arms. It's very much a textbook military operation, and if you look into history, you will definitely note that between 1941 and 1943, there were many military operations between the Soviet Union at the time and the Nazi Germany that took place exactly in that part of the world, exactly in the same area. And so we see perhaps some links with what has happened in the past, but of course with one great difference, and that is technology. We've seen a lot of high-tech gear and technology being used. So to answer your question very simply, the Russian attack has had three main steps or three main sub-operations with three distinct objectives. The first operation is the operation that was led by two army corps of the Russian Federation, which went into the Republic of Donetsk and the Republic of Luhansk with the objective to support the separatist movements, the armed groups that were there, because they have been fighting a struggle for the past 8 or so years against Ukrainian armed forces. So this was one of the three moves. The second move is a much larger, more intensive, and very much similar to the Blitzkrieg of the Second World War. It was an armored, mechanized assault from the north in the direction of Kharkov, and from the south, from the Crimean Peninsula towards the north over the river Dnieper, which kind of separates Ukraine into two sets of territories or two land masses. And the objective of this concerted, synchronized, mechanized assault was really to encircle about a third of the forces of the army of Ukraine. This is also still underway. And then what most of the commentators and what most of the news have been reporting is a third attack, and I would say a separate military operation, which has been taking place since the very first hours of the conflict. And this has been an attack, a deliberate attack against the capital, Kiev. And this has taken various forms since the first day. On the first day, armed helicopters with transporting troops were intended to seize an airfield, an airport that was about 25 kilometers from the center of Kiev. This airborne assault failed miserably. 12 helicopters were shot down, and this was a great surprise to the Russian forces. And eventually those forces that did land kept fighting for a little while, but then were eventually taken prisoner. Most of the very large cargo planes, which were supposed to transport all of the military equipment to sustain this bridgehead of the airborne forces, did not even take off because the airfield had not been secured. And so Russia has had no other choice than to drive towards Kiev by land. And so 2 mechanized brigades have been taking positions and moving across very difficult terrain along the river Dnieper. One of these 2 brigades has had to cross the compound of the nuclear power plant of Chernobyl. And of course, this has also slowed down the advance. These forces have essentially run out of fuel and have required supporting units, so other mechanized brigades, a second echelon to move forward. And this was the case on day 3 of the offensive. And now what we are seeing is a progressive encirclement of Kiev, not really a very strong push into the city, urban warfare such as we have seen in Grozny or in other places, but we are seeing a gradual encirclement of Kiev, which is, of course, the strategic objective. And then the operational objective is to take prisoner, to encircle most of the armed forces of Ukraine in the eastern part of the country.
Now, you talk about that objective, and one would ask, to what end in this day and age? You know, so they take Kiev and occupy Kiev?
I would say there's 2 objectives. There's always a minimum objective, so what the Russians will be satisfied with and eventually will have to negotiate. And there's always a maximum objective. The maximum objective clearly is to take over the entire country. And in the Russian mentality and the Russian doctrine, this means taking over the capital city of Kiev. The government is less important. Of course, it would be good if the president of Ukraine was captured or the regime was changed or moved. Vladimir Putin has been very explicit about these aims, but taking the capital city of Kiev is the strategic objective of Russian forces. And if that cannot be achieved, then at the minimum, a sizable proportion, about 1/3 of the Ukraine armed forces, need to be put out of commission. This is what Vladimir Putin has referred to as the demilitarization of Ukraine, because this will no longer allow Ukraine military forces to pose a threat on the secessionist republics that Russia aims to annex.
Just to help, what kind of shape is the Ukrainian army in prior to this? What would be their capability? And we hear a lot about the Russian army, of course, significant numbers. But what kind of tooling are we looking at?
Okay, it depends how much time you have in your show.
Because you can do this in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes. Very briefly, there is not a single area in which Ukraine armed forces have any kind of superiority, either in numbers or in quality. Whether you are talking about tanks, whether you're talking about airplanes, Ukraine has to do with less and, let's say, not modernized equipment, whether we're talking about the Air Force, whether we're talking about infantry weapons or anything else. So there's not a miracle solution for Ukraine, except the old doctrine of making Russia pay very, very dearly for every meter of ground that they take, there is a military rule, a ratio. You need about 3 attackers in order to overtake a single defender, if you admit that both are using the same kind of weaponry. So you see the kind of military efforts that Russia is going to need to undertake in order to be successful in its objectives. So far, it has not been very effective. The Ukrainian forces have resisted, I think, better than anybody could have predicted. At the same time, they're winning the opinion and the information warfare. At the same time, they are mobilizing their reserves because there is a National Guard that has been created about 4 or 5 years ago, and they are arming this National Guard in order to resist in the cities. And so they are going to make Russia pay very dearly for their excuse me to say, limited successes so far.
Now, let's talk about the diplomatic engagements that have been ongoing. And Dr. Thea Champon, just give me a few more minutes. I'll get you so that we look at the Ghana side in terms of impact. As the offensive is ongoing, Europe has also been talking. Can you explain to us what the European conversation, where it is headed right now, and what the pressure points could be? Because it does look like Vladimir Putin is very clear in his mind what he wants, and he seems prepared to suffer some level of punishment to get what he wants. Is Europe prepared to suffer along with him?
I'm not sure that Europe is prepared to suffer with Russia, but definitely I think in Europe, a continent which has been devastated twice by world wars and has been suffering and paying a lot of money during the Cold War for the main belligerents, for the 2 superpowers to have their policies taken seriously. I think there's a general opinion that an attack must not prevail. We're here in front of a clear violation of the United Nations Charter. I don't want to get into the discussion of who is right and who is wrong, because I am sure that everybody has done something wrong at one point or another, but that's not the point. The point is that a military attack on a smaller state like Ukraine is unwarranted, and that's a breach of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. And this is something very important for Europeans, because like you said, the fact that Ghana is a small country, well, a lot of European countries are also small countries, and they are very worried when they hear boots and tanks and shells being fired and missiles being fired and new technologies and an arms race being launched. They're very aware and very afraid of this. And so what we are seeing is a rearmament effort pioneered by Germany, but other countries, Finland, Sweden, have also been rearming quite substantially. And we're seeing economic sanctions that are hurting Russia very dearly, not only coming from Europe, by the way, but Japan has announced economic sanctions that are also going to hit the military industrial complex in Russia. And of course, the uncertainty and the important variable that is going to make or break this union or this unity of nations against this armed aggression is going to be the position of China.
Why is China so important in this equation from the European perspective and also from the Russian perspective?
Let me answer you in 2 different ways. First of all, China has been completely marginalized in this conflict. And when I say marginalized, I mean, nobody has asked China what its position was with regards to this conflict. And we're seeing, in fact, a return to the political climate of the Cold War, East versus West, where China doesn't really have a role to play. Now, at the same time, China, the People's Republic of China, is in a bit of a difficult situation politically and diplomatically speaking, because even if China wanted to support Russia as an ally or wanted to keep Russia as an ally, and this is a hypothesis that I'm formulating, then it's going to be very difficult for China to do that, because traditionally the foreign policy of China has always been non-intervention, non-interference, and no aggression, no military intervention in foreign countries. So you see that China is in a difficult situation. It will probably intensify its economic ties with Russia, at least up to a certain point. But how much help can China really give Russia, and how much is China going to have to pay for this alliance? This is something that will remain, that we will need to keep following.
Interesting. I'll come back to you, Dr. Alexander Vutrava, security expert, himself a former military man, served 17 years, commanded tank companies and armored battalions. So he knows what he's talking about. But currently he's at the Global Studies Institute of the University of Geneva. Let me talk to Theo. And Theo, you have been looking at the economic impact of this conflict. Somebody might, usually the Ghanaian will sit back and say, well, it's very far away. But such is the world these days. You can never be too far away from, you can be far away from the actual fighting, but we are fighting economically. And you have outlined several facets of our economy that will feel the impact, or is feeling the impact of this conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your two other panelists, Alexander and Mr. Kwabena, have done a great job of articulating the geopolitical antecedents of the conflict. But the point really is that we are in a hyper-globalized world, and whatever happens in some distant place has an impact on a small open economy like Ghana. So the way I see it, directly you have about 3 channels through which we would see the impact of the conflict manifest. The first one is the price impact, or the price channel, and this is to do with oil, which I would come to, and then also soft commodities like wheat and and other imports. This second channel is the social impact. So when you have the price impact, it's actually going to translate into elevated inflationary pressures domestically on an economy like Ghana. And then the third channel is actually sort of on the trade angle, where again, when we look at the data, especially in terms of trade between Ghana and Russia and Ghana and Ukraine, is really not that big. We're not, both of them are not a top 20 trading nation of Ghana in that respect. So the emphasis of the impact really is going to be more on the price channel, and then secondly at the social level. And I want to sort of maybe just explain with the price, starting off with the oil.
Yes, go ahead.
And also with the soft commodity. So, I mean, Ghana is a net exporter of crude oil. We are doing around 180,000 barrels a day, and consuming internally just around 13,000 barrels of oil a day. And what this does is that anytime prices go up on the international market, then you expect to have a significant positive impact on the country's trade balance in that respect. But it gets a little bit tricky in the sense that although we're a net exporter, we still use a big chunk of our monies to import crude oil products into the country. So let me give you some numbers. As of 2021, we were spending around 3.8% of our GDP, or just about 2.7 billion on our oil import bill. And then oil exports cumulatively gave us around 3.9 billion in 2020. but actually only about 17%, in other words, just around $640 million came directly into the country. So your trade balance improves. However, you do have to spend more money importing crude oil products into the country. And when you don't control the price on the international market, it means you still pretty much have to use the savings that you got from the higher price or higher increment in oil prices to buy more of these petroleum products into your country to meet your domestic needs. And that also then, in an environment where the local currency is already under pressure, it would push or elevate the inflation rate, and that further then means will have a dent or an impact on livelihoods. The second one on the soft commodities, again, is very similar in that respect. Both Russia and to an extent Belarus control almost about 40% of the global market for potash fertilizer, which we use for our agriculture products. And so with the imposition of sanctions, with some of the ports in the southern part of Ukraine being blocked off, and all these being severed, you are going to see an impact. And we're actually already seeing that with these commodity prices. So potash prices have gone up, and subsequently also wheat prices have also gone up. So Russia and Ukraine this time around, not Russia and Belarus, Russia and Ukraine control around 30% of the global market for wheat. And we are seeing that also impact already beginning to be felt across the world. If you look at the Ghana data, Ghana imports around 990,000 metric tons of wheat into the country. So roughly about 1 million metric tons of wheat. If you look at where that's coming from, about half of that comes from Canada, and then the remainder comes from Russia, France, and then the USA to an extent. So any of the price point or price pressures that we're seeing would mean that wheat prices go up, and domestically again in Ghana, the price goes up. And I am more worried, especially when you look at the consumption basket, right, in Ghana, especially for for example, like the wheat. Of that 1 million metric tons, 85% of that wheat that we import goes into making bread, and then the remaining 15% for like cakes and other pastries. And when you look at the inflation data by the statistical service, almost about 41% of household consumption expenditure in Ghana is coming from food and beverages. So on average, a typical household is spending about 40% or 40p out of every dollar or cedi on these. And then you also have some other effects on the transport, angle. So literally, you're looking pretty much like a double whammy of that impact on an economy, like Ghana. So we might think that what is happening in Russia and Ukraine seems rather distant or far off, but actually for several of the economies, including Ghana, we are already seeing the impact or the effect of that. One of the ways to solve it domestically, which is long-term, I think, things like wheat, we can substitute the consumption of wheat with, with cassava flour, with yam flour, things like that, because these are like acquired taste anyway. But it forces or makes an imperative for countries like Ghana to start seriously thinking and addressing the issues of, import substitution and building your domestic energy needs or refining capacity, including even deploying, things like renewable energy.
You spoke about the oil, soft commodities, social impact, and then trade. On the matter of sanctions, if Russia is sanctioned, does that and sanctions have been put in place, yes. How does that affect us doing business with Russia?
For sure. I mean, it will have some impact in terms of like, if you're a company and you need to make certain payments, now you don't have access to the SWIFT system. And so there's no means of, for example, bringing in goods from Russia into Ghana, things like that. But at an aggregate level, Ghana on the sanctions end actually wouldn't feel it that much, because I looked at the data, and what was quite clear is that Ghana-Russia trade relations, there is fairly negligible. It's actually the less than $100 or so million dollars, and they are not in any of our top 10 or even top 20 export or import nations. Something similar also with Ukraine. So I think the trade corridor or the trade impact for now is fairly negligible, and the biggest impact on the economy of Ghana would actually be through the price channel, oil, wheat, other soft commodities, and then the subsequent indirect effect of that in driving up, inflation and household consumption overall.
But the oil seems to be the most problematic, as we have come to discover.
Yeah, I mean, for now it's the oil one that we're seeing, and also it's because, like we discussed previously in the other session, domestically we haven't done enough to deepen our processing capacity, and so you're forced to go outside and bring these products into the country. Domestically, we're also not doing enough to eat more of what we grow on our own, and to create the value chain linkages, internally. And so that what all of these then force you is, you are pretty much dependent on a lot of exports, where you have to spend hard currency to bring these goods and services into your country. And ultimately, whenever such external or exogenous shock, like we're seeing with the conflict, manifest in things like oil prices or other commodities, we're literally running helter-skelter because you don't have any shock absorbers whatsoever to mitigate the impact of that shock on your economy.
All right, thank you, Theo. Let me come back to Ambassador Kwabena Said Dankwa from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and again, just settle back a bit. So, Ambassador, just to get back on the evacuation process and what we are trying to do, the strategy with the Ghanaian students, you did announce the corridor that has been created by Russia, but we also understand a lot of these are students in medical school, some of them in their final year, some of them a few months from graduation. We've heard whispers of certain arrangements that the Ghana government is working on. Have any of them been completed with other countries where they can perhaps just write their completion exams and then move on from there?
Well, before I get to that, can I just add to what you said?
Okay.
In terms of the opportunity cost.
Yes, please.
Remember that development cooperation is a major aspect of our global interaction. And the announcement by a number of our key partners in terms of the sizable investments that they are making into defense-related expenditure, because they think that there's a threat in the international environment, and nobody knows where what has happened is going to lead to. So many of our partners, our development partners, are shifting or reallocating resources for defense. And I just want to stress that even the support that is being given to Ukraine and also to the millions of refugees that are being generated by this conflict means that there are less resources available for the kinds of development cooperation that potentially is necessary for us to transform our economy. So, we're going to have impacts both directly, as Theo said, but also in terms of the ability of countries to support others in their own objectives. But going back to the students, there are a number of discussions, especially in terms of inside Ghana itself, what could be done to ensure that these students do not lose academically. The question has been raised as to whether there could be some virtual programs with the parent universities and so on, which I don't know how that can be done, because these are institutions which are under bombardment and other forms of attack and disruption. So it seems to me that the most potentially viable would have to be with institutions in Ghana, and that issue has been brought to the attention of the appropriate authorities. I cannot say that we have a solution at this moment, but that is the direction that we're going.
There had also been a slight criticism of the speed of operations, and perhaps that's also due to the absence of Ghana from some of the from a full administrative presence, so to say, of Ghana from some of the countries who are helping us out. So maybe in Poland, in Hungary, in Moldova, in some of those other countries that mentioned. What lessons have we picked up with regards to what to do with our diplomatic efforts in these spaces?
Well, may I just say that, some of the criticisms, I think, misunderstand the situation. Yes, at the beginning of after the massing of troops along the borders of Ukraine, a number of Western countries shared intelligence as to what they thought was the intention of the Russian Federation. And then called on their citizens to leave. And Ghana also, at a certain point, advised our citizens to leave. But I should point out that, and the media would bear witness to this, everybody had their own views on whether the intelligence coming from the United States and others was genuine or not. In fact, there was an incident at the Defense Department in the United States where an American journalist was challenging the intelligence which was being reported by the spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense. The Russian Federation kept assuring the world. And remember that usually when the government speaks publicly, you have to give it the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. And the Russian Federation kept assuring the entire world that they had no intention of invading Ukraine. So the dynamic there did not indicate that you had to rush to get people out. And in fact, as you recall, they crossed the border whilst the Security Council was debating, its decision regarding the two breakaway republics. So in fact, almost everyone was overtaken by events. And again, we had appealed to the Russian Federation to resort to peaceful means. So, that was the environment within which they invaded Ukraine. Now, you would also recall that the French president, President Macron, has just called on his citizens to leave Russia after the discussion he had with President Putin. Now, what is the implication? Maybe France knows something. We don't know. So if something were to happen and we had to take out our citizens in an emergency from Russia, somebody could say, well, Macron had said to French citizens to leave Russia. But, do you know something about what is going to happen in the coming weeks in Russia? That might require that our citizens be out. So there's an element of imprecision, especially when you're getting formally and publicly assurances which are then in the end contradicted. So we cannot, the lesson that we can learn from Ukraine, and I know that our ability to move people out of Ukraine and what we've done. Remember that when we started bringing our citizens to Ghana, Ghana was the only African country to have done so. So we've done quite a remarkable job in terms of moving our people from different parts of Ukraine. And one of the key lessons from there is that working with the student leadership, both in Ukraine and in Ghana, working with the Pentecostal church, the civil society organizations, is fundamental because, as you said, our strength on the ground is very thin because, of course, we are a lower middle income country, and so we don't have the kinds of resources and capacities that the industrialized countries have. But working together, we've been able to ensure that we have the information and the database that enables us to identify where our nationals are and to be able to help bring them out. And I should conclude by saying that the friendly relations that we enjoy with countries has been enormously helpful. And so all the countries that border Ukraine and that agreed to receive our nationals and set aside their visa regimes and so on, that is because of the foreign policy of the country. And of course, even in terms of talking to Belarus and Russia, the kinds of things that we're seeing in terms of the humanitarian corridor has to be part of that diplomatic assets that we have based on our foreign policy direction.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Kwabena Osei Dankwa, Special Advisor to the Foreign Minister. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the conversation with Dr. Alexandra Vutraves from the Global Studies Institute, University of Geneva. Welcome back. Final leg of the show. And Dr. Vutraves, so from where you sit, with all the engagements that are ongoing, we've had initial talks between the Ukrainian side and the Russian side. Demands have been made. The incursions are ongoing. The shelling is ongoing. Can you project how long Russia is willing to let this go on?
There's a fantastic book which I can only recommend to read, a book of 1995 by General Rupert Smith on the utility of war. And in this book, General Smith talks about something new in international affairs and in armed conflict that has never happened before in the many centuries of military history. And that is the fact that for the first time in history, you now have a different power play, a different dynamic of negotiation, because until now we've always had maybe two parties to a conflict, maybe three, maybe four, maybe six, maybe 16 parties to the conflict, but everybody wanted the same thing. Everybody wanted to win. Well, now in history, things are becoming more complicated because you have a certain number of parties to the conflict who are not interested in winning. And Vladimir Putin, in previous conflicts, let's talk about the situation in Georgia. Let's talk about the situation in Syria. Let's take the situation, you've mentioned Moldova and Transnistria before. All of these situations are unsettled. And essentially, the conflict is frozen, but there is no solution to the conflict. And we can multiply this with talking about Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina. We can multiply examples. So I'm not sure that the end game is really winning, but the end game is really trying to assert Russia back into international affairs, international relations, and essentially deterring NATO advances or the expansion, the continued expansion of NATO into certain countries such as Ukraine, such as Georgia, such as Central Asia. This is essentially the objective of the Russian president today.
What is your take on those who say it's all well and good to blame Russia, but they had been warning of dire consequences if this invitation that was being waved at countries around them did not stop from NATO countries, and that they had basically given 15 or 20 years worth of warning. And so people should not have been surprised by Russia's response to this.
Let me answer you. You mentioned that I was a colonel in the Swiss Armed Forces, and you know that Switzerland is a neutral country. And Switzerland joined in 1995 the Partnership for Peace program, which is a non-binding organization that was put in place by NATO for neutral countries and also for countries that have been let down and evacuated by Soviet and Russian occupation forces in the early 1990s when the Soviet Union ceased to exist. So what you said sounds very nice. It's a nice story to tell, but that's just simply not how it happened. And the way it happened was all of those countries that for about 50 years, half a century, had a protector in the form of the Soviet Union, which, by the way, was a protector in a very cynical sense because the Soviet Union essentially got a lot of money from this military occupation of these countries. Well, when the Soviet Union left, these countries knew one thing: they had to quickly and as quickly as possible step into the train of a military and political alliance. And the military alliance was NATO, and the political alliance was the European Union. And so I understand what you say. And as I said, it's a very nice story and it's very coherent. And if some of my master's students debated the issue in this way, I would say, fantastic. That's a very legitimate way of presenting things, but that's simply not how it happened. And take the neutral countries, take the countries that were former Warsaw Pact countries. Poland is an excellent example, but we could talk about Bulgaria, Romania, and so on and so forth. Well, what did these countries want? All of these countries wanted to join the European Union for economic and political stability, and they all wanted to join NATO for some kind of military security. The fact of the matter is, Russia has never provided military security to anyone. And number two, Russia is seen as a threat to many of these countries. And as I said, it's not about a story. It's not storytelling. That's simply the political choices that have been made by these countries in Central Europe.
So you don't think that it matters the positions, or, for want of a better word, the feelings of a country, an economy the size of Russia matters in this regard? That, again, those who would say, again, permit me here, who would say the US won't allow this on their borders, so why should Russia allow it?
You mentioned something really fantastic. Once again, it's very nice to say the economic importance of Russia. What exactly is the economic importance of Russia? The GDP of Russia is just a little above the GDP of Portugal. So I think, the population of Russia is less than France and Germany combined. So let's look at some real facts. Now, Russia has a big stick. Russia has 6,000 and something nuclear weapons. Russia has 15,000 tanks and an army of close to 1 million men. And this is why people respect Russia today. But it's not because they're providing any kind of security to anyone. And it's definitely not because it's a peaceful nation or has been in the last 20 years.
Fantastic submission. Thank you very much for the clarification, Dr. Alexander Vutravers, ex-retired Lieutenant Colonel of the Swiss Army, but now teaching at the Global Studies Institute, the University of Geneva. He's also the editor-in-chief of the Revue Militaire Suisse. And also thank you very much, Ambassador Kwabena Osei-Dankwa. Also a big thank you to Dr. Theo Chiampong and Samuel Bequin for joining us on the show today. I hope you have enjoyed the economy discussion and the international relations section of The Big Issue today. Like I said, if you do miss out, don't worry. Just get on our YouTube channel, CityTube, CITITUBE, and you can catch up. Also, tomorrow is Independence Day. What are you doing for Ghana on Independence Day? Always a time for sober reflection. And the Heritage Caravan, for all the caravanites, I know you are listening to The Big Issue on the bus. I say safe journey. Don't enjoy yourself too much because I am not there with you. So just keep some of the joy for me. But have a safe trip. Enjoy yourselves. And we will see you when you return next week.